The rain arrived long before the night did. Thin silver drops drifted across the sleepy coastal town, tapping softly against old windows and empty fishing boats tied along the harbor. Fog rolled in from the ocean like a living thing, swallowing the edges of the streets and blurring the yellow glow of the lamps that lined the waterfront. Most tourists had disappeared weeks ago with the end of summer, leaving behind only tired fishermen, quiet diners, and locals who had spent their entire lives beside the sea. It was the kind of town where nobody expected strangers, especially not Keanu Reeves. Yet there he was, stepping out of an aging black pickup truck with a hood pulled low over his face, hoping the rain and darkness would hide him from the world for a little while longer. He looked exhausted, not physically, but in the way people looked when life had asked too much of them for too many years. Hollywood had become louder lately. Endless interviews, cameras, fake smiles, conversations that never meant anything. He had driven for hours without a destination, simply following empty highways until the ocean appeared beside him. And somehow, he ended up here. The cafe near the harbor was small and warm, its windows fogged from the heat inside. A wooden sign above the entrance creaked in the wind while an old neon light blinked weakly in the corner. Keanu stepped inside quietly, lowering his head as the scent of coffee and cinnamon wrapped around him. Nobody recognized him, at least not yet. A waitress with tired eyes greeted him politely before returning to wiping down tables. The cafe wasn't crowded. Just a few fishermen hunched over coffee mugs and two elderly women whispering near the counter. Keanu chose a booth near the window. Outside, rain slid slowly down the glass. For a while, he simply sat there listening to the soft hum of conversations around him, but then he noticed something strange. Every few minutes, someone glanced toward the harbor, toward the same spot. One of the older women sighed quietly. "Poor girl," she muttered. The other shook her head sadly. "Used to sing like an angel." Keanu looked up slightly. Now she barely speaks. The waitress overheard them and lowered her voice. "People say she hasn't been the same since the accident." "What accident?" one fisherman asked. Nobody answered immediately. The silence itself felt heavy. Finally, the waitress looked toward the window. "Lily Carter," she whispered. "Sweetest girl you'd ever meet. Then one night everything changed." Keanu followed, her gaze through the rain-streaked glass. At first, he barely saw her. A lone figure sat beneath a flickering street lamp near the edge of the harbor wall. A young girl, maybe 19 or 20, wrapped in an oversized gray coat. Headphones covered her ears while dark hair clung damply to her face from the rain. She wasn't scrolling through a phone or watching the boats. She was staring at the ocean, completely still. Something about her felt haunting. Not dramatic, not attention-seeking, just empty. Keanu couldn't explain why he kept looking. He had seen sadness before. Real sadness. The kind cameras could never capture. But this felt different somehow, as though the girl sitting beneath that dying street lamp had quietly disconnected herself from the rest of the world. Then the cafe door burst open. A heavy-set man stumbled inside, laughing loudly, clearly drunk. The sharp smell of alcohol followed him through the room. He peeled off his wet jacket and noticed everyone staring toward the harbor window. His expression twisted. "She's still sitting out there?" He scoffed. Nobody responded. The man laughed again, crueler this time. "Girl's gone crazy, if you ask me." The waitress stiffened uncomfortably. "Tommy, leave it alone." But he kept going. "She used to sing in here all the time, remember? Now look at her. Just sits in the rain like some ghost." He snorted. "Whole town acting like she's fragile glass." Keanu's jaw tightened slightly. The drunk man leaned closer to the window, shaking his head. If she wants pity so bad, maybe she should charge tickets. A few uncomfortable chuckles echoed weakly through the cafe. Then Keanu spoke, quietly. "That's enough." The room went still. The drunk turned. "Excuse me?" Keanu looked at him calmly, his voice low and controlled. "You don't know what she's carrying." The man frowned. "And you do?" "No," Keanu admitted. "But I know pain when I see it." For a moment, tension filled the cafe. The drunk seemed ready to argue further, but something in Keanu's eyes stopped him cold. Maybe it was the calmness. Maybe it was the weight behind his words. Either way, the man muttered under his breath and turned away. The waitress exhaled softly in relief. Outside, the girl beneath the street lamp finally moved. Lily stood slowly, adjusting her headphones before walking along the harbor path into the yacht. Thick fog rolling off the ocean. Keanu watched her disappear. Then something happened. Faint at first, almost impossible to hear beneath the rain. A melody. He froze. Lily was humming softly to herself as she walked through the mist. The tune trembled painfully, unfinished and broken, yet heartbreakingly beautiful. It carried through the night like the echo of someone trying not to cry. Keanu felt something shift deep inside him. The voice lasted only seconds before fading, into the fog completely, but he couldn't stop hearing it. And somehow, without understanding why, he knew that moment was going to change both of their lives forever. The fog had thickened by morning, swallowing the harbor in a pale, restless silence. The cafe windows were still fogged over, but inside, life continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened the night before. Cups clinked, coffee brewed, conversations drifted in and out like passing waves, but Keanu Reeves was no longer just another stranger in a corner booth. He had stopped being able to forget the melody. It clung to him in fragments, the fragile rise and fall of a voice that didn't feel like performance, but like something slipping out of a wounded soul without permission. He had heard music before, heard talent, heard perfection. But what he heard last night wasn't any of those things. It was survival. He returned to the cafe earlier than anyone expected him to. The waitress gave him a curious look but said nothing. Outside, fishermen were already pulling nets, their boots splashing through shallow puddles left behind by the rain. Keanu ordered coffee he didn't really want, and waited. The town, as always, whispered. She still hasn't been to school. Her mother barely leaves the house anymore. They say she talks to herself at night. Every sentence felt like a piece of a story nobody was telling properly. Then he heard her name again. Lily Carter. This time softer, more careful. As if saying it too loudly might break something. Keanu turned slightly toward the window, and there she was. Not beneath the street lamp this time, but standing at the edge of the harbor where the sea met the stone walkway. She wore the same oversized coat, her hands tucked inside her sleeves, headphones still on, head down. But this time, she wasn't alone. A group of teenagers passed behind her laughing. One of them pointed. "Isn't that her?" one boy whispered. Loudly, the girl beside him smirked. "The ghost singer." They laughed. Lily didn't react, not even a flinch. That was what struck Keanu the most. Not the cruelty, but the absence of response. As if she had learned to exist outside of the world. Entirely. Then one of them shouted louder. "Hey! Sing something!" Lily stopped walking. Just for a second. Keanu noticed it immediately. That tiny pause. That microscopic hesitation in her shoulders. Like something inside her had tried to rise, and then collapsed before it could reach the surface. But she didn't. Turn around. She kept walking, slowly, like she was carrying something heavy only she could feel. The teenagers lost interest and moved on, laughing again, their voices fading into the distance. Keanu stood up without thinking. The waitress noticed. "Hey, your coffee!" But he was already outside. The cold hit him immediately. The ocean wind carried salt and something older, something worn down by time. He followed her at a distance, careful not to rush, not to disturb. He didn't know why he was doing it yet, only that he couldn't stop. Lily walked without direction, passing closed shops and empty benches until she reached a small, weathered staircase leading down to the rocks near the water. She sat there, same place as last night, same silence. Keanu stopped a few meters away, hidden partially behind a rusted railing. He watched her carefully, not intruding, not approaching. For a long time, nothing happened, only waves, only wind. Then Lily slowly removed one headphone, just one, as if testing whether the world still existed. And then it came again, the humming, faint, shaky, a melody unfinished. Like a sentence someone had stopped halfway through because the pain became too much to continue speaking. Keanu felt his chest tighten. But then something unexpected happened. The melody broke. Lily's breathing changed. Faster. Unsteady. She pressed, her fingers against her ears as if trying to shut the world out entirely. Her shoulders trembled violently, and then she whispered something. So quiet it almost disappeared into the wind. "I'm sorry." The words weren't meant for anyone. Standing there, they were meant for someone who wasn't coming back. Keanu understood that much instantly, a memory, a fracture, something she was reliving alone every single day. He took one step forward without realizing it, a stone shifted beneath his shoe. Lily froze, her head turned slightly. Not fully, just enough to know she had sensed him. Keanu didn't speak. He simply stepped back again, a silent apology without words. After a long pause, Lily stood up quickly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. She didn't look toward him, didn't acknowledge him. She just pulled her headphones back on and walked away faster this time, as if the air itself had become too heavy to breathe. But as she passed, Keanu heard it again, barely audible. Not a full melody this time, just a broken fragment. A voice trying to sing but collapsing halfway through the sound. And it wasn't just sadness anymore, it was fear. When she disappeared up the stairs and back into the town, Keanu remained standing near the rocks, staring at the place she had been sitting. The Seah. Ocean roared beneath him, indifferent and endless. He realized something then. This wasn't just a girl who had stopped singing. This was a girl who was still singing, somewhere inside herself, but didn't believe she was allowed to. The next morning arrived without warmth. Gray clouds pressed low over the coastal town, as if the sky itself had grown tired of holding itself up. The harbor was quieter than usual. Even the gulls seemed distant, circling lazily above the water instead of crying out like they normally did. Everything felt muted, colors, sounds, even time. But inside that silence, Keanu Reeves felt something building, not urgency, not curiosity. Something closer to responsibility. He didn't understand it yet, but the image of Lily Carter sitting on those cold rocks, fighting a melody that kept breaking inside her chest, had stayed with him through the night. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a kind of emotional fracture that didn't heal on its own. The kind that needed someone else to notice it before it swallowed everything whole. He found himself walking again toward the harbor path without planning to. This time, he didn't wait at the cafe. He went straight to the place where he had seen her last. The rocks were empty, only the sea remained, restless and endless, crashing against the shore with steady rhythm. A few pieces of driftwood lay scattered like forgotten memories. Keanu stood there for a long moment, scanning the area. Then he noticed something unusual, a small notebook, half soaked. Wedged between two stones like it had been placed there carefully, not dropped, He crouched down and picked it up gently. The cover was worn, edges softened by time and weather. Inside, the pages were filled with handwriting, some neat, some rushed, some almost unreadable. But everywhere he looked, there were fragments of lyrics, broken lines, half-finished thoughts, emotional bursts captured before they could disappear, and one name repeated again and again, Lily. But not always as a subject, sometimes as a promise. Sometimes as a wound. Sometimes as an apology. Keanu didn't read everything. He didn't need to. The feeling behind the words was enough to tell him this wasn't just writing, it was survival translated into ink. A voice trying not to vanish. Behind him, footsteps crunched softly on gravel. He turned slightly. Lily stood, a few meters away. She looked startled, not because he was there, but because he was holding the notebook. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, Keanu saw something other than emptiness. Panic. She moved quickly. "Don't!" Her voice cracked immediately, like it hadn't been used properly in a long time. She stopped, as if even speaking. "Hurt." Keanu slowly stood up, careful not to scare her. "I didn't read it," he said gently. "Not all of it." That wasn't fully true. But it was the truth that mattered most right now. Lily hesitated. Her hands were shaking inside her sleeves. "That's mine," she whispered. "I know," Keanu replied. "It feels like pieces of you." That made her flinch, not because it was wrong, because it was too accurate. For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind filled the silence between them, pulling at the edges of her coat, pushing waves into the shore. Then Lily stepped forward, snatched the notebook, clutched it tightly to her chest like something fragile and irreplaceable. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice breaking again halfway through the sentence. "People don't stay here." Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but directly at her. "I'm not here to take anything," he said quietly. "I think I'm here because something in you is still trying to speak." Lily shook her head sharply. "It's gone." The words were instant, defensive, final, like she had repeated them to herself too many times to question them anymore. Keanu took a slow breath, letting the wind pass between them. "No," he said softly. "It's not gone." That made her angry. Sudden shift. "I don't sing anymore," she snapped, louder this time. The sound startled even her. She pressed a hand to her mouth immediately afterward, like she regretted letting it escape. But Keanu didn't step back. He didn't push forward. Either, he simply stayed. "That doesn't mean it disappeared," he said calmly. "It might just be waiting." Lily's eyes filled instantly, but she blinked fast, refusing to let anything fall. "You don't know anything about me," she said. Keanu nodded slightly. "You're right." That answer confused her. He continued anyway. "But I know what it feels like to lose someone's voice, even when they're still standing right in front of you." The words landed differently. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just honest. And that honesty made her look away. For the first time, Lily didn't run immediately. She just stood there, gripping the notebook, breathing unevenly as if the air itself had become heavier. Finally, she spoke again, but softer this time. "Why do you care?" The question wasn't angry now. It was tired. Keanu looked toward the ocean for a moment before answering. "Because I think sometimes people don't need fixing," he said. "They just need someone to stay close enough so they don't disappear." Completely. The wind grew stronger. Lily's shoulders trembled slightly, and then very faintly, so faint it could have been imagined. Her voice slipped out again. Not words, not even a melody. Just a broken sound, a note that didn't know where it belonged anymore. She froze immediately, horrified by her own voice. But Keanu didn't react with shock or pity or anything that would make her retreat. He just listened, like it mattered, and for the first time in a long time. Lily didn't immediately shut herself down. She just stood. There, caught between silence and something dangerously close to becoming a song again. The wind that morning felt different. Less like weather, more like memory moving through the town. Even the sea seemed quieter, as if it was listening for something it had forgotten how to hear. Keanu Reeves didn't leave the harbor after that moment. Neither did Lily Carter. But they also didn't speak much. What happened between them wasn't a conversation anymore. It was something slower, more fragile. Like two people learning how to exist in the same emotional space without breaking it. Lily stood a few steps away, still holding her soaked notebook tightly against her chest. Her fingers wouldn't relax. Not even slightly. It was as if the pages inside were the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Keanu didn't move closer. He simply sat down on an old wooden bench near the rocks, leaving space between them. Not distance out of rejection, but distance out of respect. Minutes passed. Then more. The ocean filled the silence in ways words couldn't. Finally, Lily spoke, but not fully, not confidently. "Why are you still here?" she asked again, softer this time, as if the question had lost its sharp edges overnight. Keanu looked at her for a moment before answering. "Because I think leaving would be easier," he said honestly, "and that usually means it's the wrong thing to do." Lily lowered her gaze. That answer confused her more than it comforted her. People usually left. That was the pattern she understood. People left after tragedy, after silence, after things became too heavy to carry. But he hadn't. That unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. A gull cried somewhere far above them, breaking the stillness for a second before fading again. Lily finally sat down, not next to him, but on the steps above the rocks. Still separated, still cautious. Like trust was something she didn't know how to hold without dropping. "I used to sing here," she said suddenly. The words came out like they had been locked inside her for a long time. Keanu nodded slightly, but didn't interrupt. Lily stared at the water. "My brother would bring his guitar," she continued. "We used to come here after school. No one really listened to us, but we didn't care. It was just ours." Her voice trembled slightly on the last word. Keanu listened without moving. Lily swallowed hard. Then the emotion shifted, a crack forming. "But now," she whispered, "every sound I make feels wrong, like I don't deserve it anymore." The sentence hit the air heavily. Not dramatic, just devastating in its honesty. Keanu's expression softened, but he still didn't rush in to fix it. Instead, he said something simple. "You're still here, so something in you is still trying." That made Lily flinch slightly. She shook her head. "I'm only here because I don't know how to leave," she said quietly. "Not because I'm trying." A pause. Then she added something even harder. "I think I broke myself." The words hung there, heavy, unanswered. For a long moment, Keanu didn't respond. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because anything too fast would feel like pressure. Finally, he spoke. "I don't think broken things stop existing," he said. "I think they just change shape." Lily gave a small, bitter laugh. "That sounds nice," she whispered, "but it doesn't fix anything." Keanu nodded. "You're right," he said again. "It doesn't." That honesty made her look at him for the first time properly. Confusion replaced expectation. Most people tried to fix her. Most people tried to argue her out of her pain. He wasn't doing either. That was unfamiliar, uncomfortable, but not unwelcome. The wind shifted again. Lily hesitated. Then, almost reluctantly, she opened her notebook. The pages fluttered slightly in the breeze. Keanu didn't look directly at it, but he saw enough. Lines of lyrics, repeated words, half-finished songs, scribbles that looked like they were written in the middle of emotional collapse. And then, one page caught his attention. A title, written in slightly heavier ink than the rest, "For When I Can't Say It Out Loud." Lily noticed him noticing. She quickly tried to close the notebook again, but her fingers stopped halfway. Something inside her hesitated, a small fracture in her refusal. "I wrote that when—" she started, then stopped. Her voice failed her. She tried again. "When everything got quiet." Keanu stayed silent, letting her continue at her own pace. Lily exhaled shakily. "I stopped singing after my brother died," she said. The words came out sharper this time, like truth finally forcing its way through denial. "People think I just lost interest or got depressed." Her grip tightened. "But it wasn't that," she added. "It was like, if I made a sound, I was betraying him." The confession landed heavily between them, the real reason finally spoken aloud. Keanu understood then. This wasn't silence caused by loss alone. It was silence created by guilt. That was harder to undo, because guilt didn't fade with time. It stayed. It built a home inside people. Lily's breathing became uneven. "I hear him in everything," she whispered suddenly. "Every time I try to sing, I feel like I'm stealing something from him." Her eyes filled, but she refused to cry fully. Not here. Not in front of someone who might see it. Keanu finally shifted slightly, not closer, but more present. "I can't tell you what your brother would say," he said gently, "but I don't think he'd want your voice to become a place of punishment." Lily shook her head immediately. "You don't know that." "I don't," Keanu admitted, "but I do know this." He paused, carefully choosing the words. "Silence doesn't bring people back." That sentence hit differently, not as advice, as truth she had been avoiding. For the first time, Lily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked down at her notebook again. Then, slowly, almost unconsciously, she whispered a single note, barely audible, but real. And this time, she didn't stop herself right away. The sound lingered in the air just a little longer than before, as if something inside her was beginning, very quietly, to remember what it felt like to exist through sound again. The town changed after that morning, even if nobody else noticed it, not in obvious ways. The waves still hit the rocks the same way. The cafe still smelled like burnt coffee and warm bread. The fishermen still argued about tides like they had, for decades. But something invisible had shifted in the space between silence and sound, and Lily Carter could feel it most of all. She avoided the harbor for 2 days. Not because she wanted to leave it behind, but because something about it no longer felt safe in the way it used to. The place where she had built her silence was now also the place where it had started to crack, and cracks were dangerous, because they let things in or out. On the 3rd day, she returned anyway, not intentionally at first. Her feet simply took her, there while her mind was somewhere else. She found herself standing near the same rocks again, the notebook clutched in her hand like a shield she didn't fully trust anymore. And there, already waiting as if he had never left, was Keanu Reeves, sitting quietly on the old bench, watching the sea. He didn't stand when she arrived. He didn't smile. He simply acknowledged her presence with a small nod, as if her returning wasn't surprising, but expected in a calm, patient way. That should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, it made her feel noticed, not judged, not analyzed, just seen. Lily stayed standing for a long moment before finally sitting on the steps again, keeping her distance the way she always did. The wind was stronger today, cold enough to sting. "I almost didn't come," she said suddenly, surprising even herself. Keanu nodded slightly, I figured. He replied, that was all. No question, no pressure, just acceptance. That silence between them lasted longer this time, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt shared. Lily opened her notebook slowly. Her fingers hesitated over the pages. Then she said something softer. "I wrote something new." Keanu didn't look immediately. He let her decide the timing. After a moment, she turned the notebook slightly toward him. Not fully, just enough. A few lines stood out. "If I try to sing, will I disappear less or more?" Keanu read it silently. Then, looked back at the sea. "That's a heavy question," he said gently. Lily gave a short, almost invisible shrug. "It's the only one I have right now." A pause. Then Keanu spoke carefully. "I think disappearing doesn't happen because you sing," he said. "It happens when you stop believing your voice belongs anywhere." Lily's jaw tightened slightly. "That's easy to say," she whispered. "I know," Keanu admitted. That honesty again. No performance, no pretending, just truth. Lily looked down at the notebook again. Her thumb traced the edge of the page nervously. "I tried humming yesterday," she said suddenly. Keanu turned his head slightly toward her but still didn't interrupt. Lily continued, voice barely steady. "Just alone in my room." Her breath caught. And it felt like I was doing something wrong. Her eyes flickered with shame immediately after the sentence left her mouth, as if she regretted admitting it. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said something simple. "Did it hurt?" Lily hesitated. "Yes," she admitted. A pause. Then softer. "And no." That contradiction hung between them. Keanu understood it immediately. Because healing rarely felt clean. It felt like conflict inside the same breath. Lily closed the notebook. Quickly, as if afraid of what it might reveal next. "I don't know how to be her again," she whispered. Keanu looked at her then. Not through distance this time, but with full attention. "I don't think you have to go back," he said quietly. "I think you have to go forward with what's still alive in you." That sentence landed differently. Lily didn't respond, but she didn't shut down either. Instead, something unexpected happened. Her fingers began tapping lightly against her knee. Not a rhythm she was aware of at first, just instinct, like her body remembering something her mind had buried. Tap, pause, tap, tap. Then, almost without thinking, she exhaled a sound. A note. Small, uncertain, but held. Her eyes widened instantly, panic flashing through her face. She froze, waiting for it to feel wrong. Waiting for punishment. Waiting for the usual. Collapse. But nothing came. Only wind, only waves, only Keanu sitting quietly, not reacting like it was something fragile that would break if acknowledged too strongly. Just letting it exist. Lily's breathing sped up. "I didn't mean," she started, but the note was already gone. Still, something had changed. The air felt different, like it had accepted the sound instead of rejecting it. Keanu finally spoke softly. "That wasn't wrong," he said. Lily shook her head quickly. It felt wrong. Keanu nodded. "I believe you," he said, "but feelings aren't always instructions." That made her look at him sharply, as if she didn't know whether to believe that. A long silence followed. Then, far in the distance, a bell rang from the harbor dock, calling fishermen back in. Lily stood up abruptly, as if the sound had broken something fragile open inside her. "I have to go," she said quickly. Keanu didn't stop her, he only nodded. "Okay." She hesitated, just for a second longer than usual. Then she turned and walked away. But this time, she wasn't running from him. She was running from the sound she had almost allowed to stay. The rain returned that night without warning, heavier than before, as if the sky had been holding back too much for too long. It hit the harbor in sharp, restless sheets, turning the streets into mirrors of trembling light. The cafe signs flickered. The ocean grew louder, more aggressive, as though it was trying to speak over something else, something buried beneath years of silence. Inside a small room above the harbor, Lily Carter sat curled on her bed, staring at the soaked edges of her notebook. She couldn't stop thinking about it. The sound she had made. That single note. It wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even intentional. But it existed. And that was the problem. Because existence meant responsibility, and responsibility meant feeling again. Her chest tightened as she pressed her palms against her ears, trying to recreate the safety she had built for herself over months of silence. But the memory of the sound kept slipping through anyway. Not as pain, not as comfort, something in between. Downstairs, her mother moved quietly through the kitchen, pretending not to hear her daughter pacing again. The house had learned silence, too. Learned how to avoid breaking what was already fragile. But tonight was different. Tonight, something was shifting. Outside, near the harbor road, Keanu Reeves stood beneath a broken street lamp, rain soaking through his jacket. He wasn't supposed to be there, he knew that. He had no reason to be standing in the middle of a storm in a town that didn't belong to him, and yet, he couldn't leave. Because earlier that day, he had seen something he couldn't ignore. Lily didn't just avoid sound. She feared it like it was a consequence. Like every note carried punishment inside it, and Keanu understood something quietly devastating about that. People don't stop singing because they forget how. They stop because they believe they shouldn't anymore. A flash of lightning lit up the harbor for a second. Then darkness again. He started walking, not toward the cafe, not toward shelter, toward the small community theater by the shoreline, the same abandoned place where echoes still lingered in the wooden bones of the building. When he arrived, the door was half locked, rusted from years of neglect. He pushed it open carefully, the sound groaning through the empty space like an old memory waking up unwillingly. Inside, everything was exactly as before, dust-covered seats, a cracked stage, and at the center, the old piano. It was worse now. More broken than he remembered. One of the keys hung loose, barely attached, but it still stood, like something refusing to disappear. Keanu sat down at it slowly, let his fingers hover over the keys. He wasn't a musician. He wasn't trying to be. But he remembered the sound Lily had made, that fragile note, so he pressed a key, wrong, deliberately wrong. A harsh, uneven sound filled the theater. He winced immediately, then tried again. Another wrong note, then another. The piano groaned under each attempt, resisting him, refusing to become anything beautiful. And then, something unexpected happened. A faint echo answered him, not from the piano, from somewhere deeper in the building. A voice. "Lily." He froze instantly. The sound came again, barely audible, not singing fully, not even words, just fragments. A broken hum slipping through the walls like it didn't belong to the past anymore. Keanu stood slowly, heart tightening. He followed it, up the creaking stairs, through the dim hallway where rain dripped through the ceiling, and there she was. Lily Carter stood near the backstage entrance, soaked from the rain, her hair clinging to her face. She looked like she had been there a while, as if something inside her had pulled her here without permission. Her lips were parted slightly, and she was humming, not consciously, not intentionally, like her body had forgotten to stop. When she saw him, she stopped immediately, her eyes widened in panic. I didn't, she stammered, but the sound was already gone. Keanu didn't move closer. He didn't react like she had done something wrong. He simply said softly, "You came here." Lily shook her head quickly. "I don't know why I came here," she said, voice trembling. I couldn't stay in my room." Her breath hitched. It was too quiet. That sentence landed heavily between them. Too quiet. Not peaceful, not safe, too heavy. Keanu looked around the empty theater. "I think quiet can get loud when it carries too much inside it," he said gently. Lily looked down at her hands. They were shaking. "I hate that I did it again," she whispered. "That sound, it just came out." Keanu nodded slightly. "Maybe it wasn't something you did," he said. "Maybe it was something you let happen." That made her look up sharply, as if she didn't expect permission. A pause stretched between them. Then Lily's voice broke again. "I thought I was getting better," she said, "but it feels worse. Like every time I get close to something, I fall back." Her eyes filled instantly. "And I don't know if I can keep doing that." Keanu stepped closer this time, but only slightly. Enough to be present. Not enough to overwhelm. "You're not falling back," he said. "You're remembering." Lily shook her head. "I don't want to remember." Keanu's voice stayed calm. "I know." That honesty again, it disarmed her more than comfort ever could. Lily pressed a hand to her chest. "I think something is wrong with me," she whispered. Keanu looked at her carefully, then said something simple but heavy. "I don't think you're broken." She flinched at the word anyway. But he continued, "I think you're someone who stopped allowing sound to carry pain. So everything got trapped inside instead." Silence. Then a small breath from Lily, unsteady, and then a sound. Not a full note, not a song, just a trembling exhale shaped like voice. She stopped immediately, terrified again. But this time Keanu didn't let the moment collapse. He simply stood there and said quietly, "That one was still alive." The storm had passed by morning, but it left something behind. Not destruction, not silence. Something more subtle. The kind of stillness that feels like the world is holding its breath. The harbor glistened under washed-out sunlight, wet stone reflecting pale gold light. The waves were calmer now, almost hesitant, as if they remembered what had happened the night before. And so did Lily Carter. She hadn't slept. Not properly. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it again. The sound she had made in the abandoned theater. Not the broken humming this time, but the realization that something inside her still responded to sound. That terrified her more than silence ever had. Because silence was familiar. Sound meant returning. And returning meant feeling everything she had spent months trying not to drown in. When she finally stepped outside, the air felt too open, too wide, like it expected something from her. She walked without direction until her feet brought her back again to the place she kept trying to avoid and return to at the same time. The old theater. The doors were slightly open. Inside, dust floated lazily in the beams of morning light slipping through broken windows. And there, as if he had never left the building at all, was Keanu Reeves. Sitting on the edge of the stage, waiting, not impatient, not expectant, just present, Lily stopped at the entrance. For a moment, she almost turned away, but something in her didn't let her. Instead, she stepped inside slowly. Each step sounded too loud, or maybe she was just noticing sound again. She stood near the aisle but didn't sit. Keanu looked up and gave a small nod. "You came back," he said. Lily swallowed. "I didn't plan to," she replied honestly. "That's usually how it starts," he said gently. A quiet pause followed. Then Lily hugged her arms tightly around herself. "I keep hearing it," she admitted. Keanu didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. Still, she continued. "The sound I made, it won't leave me alone." Her voice shook slightly. It felt like something inside me woke up, and I don't know how to make it go back to sleep. Keanu listened carefully, then said, "I don't think it goes back to sleep." That made her tense, but he continued. "I think it changes what sleep feels like." Lily frowned slightly, as if trying to understand something too abstract for comfort. "I don't want to fall apart again," she whispered. Keanu nodded slowly. "I know." A pause. Then Lily's voice cracked. "But I don't know how to be anything else." That sentence carried more weight than anything she had said before. Not sadness, not anger, loss of identity. Keanu looked at her for a long moment before answering. "You don't have to become someone new," he said. "You just have to stop treating the parts of you that survived like they're enemies." That landed quietly, but deeply. Lily looked down at the stage floor. The wood was scratched. Old, familiar. "Why are you still here?" she asked again, softer than before. Keanu exhaled slowly. Not tired, just honest. "Because I think I understand something now," he said. Lily looked up slightly. "What?" He paused, choosing words carefully. "Some people don't need to be pushed back into life," he said. "They need someone to stay near them while they figure out they're still already in it." Silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty anymore, just full of possibility. Lily's fingers trembled slightly at her sides. Then, almost unconsciously, she stepped forward. One step, then another. Not toward Keanu, toward the stage. The place where sound used to live. She stopped at the edge. Her breathing became uneven. Keanu didn't move, didn't speak, didn't interrupt the moment. Lily closed her eyes, and for a long time, she just stood there, fighting herself. Then, very softly, a sound came out. Not a note, not a song. A breath shaped into tone. It wavered immediately. She froze, eyes opening wide in panic. But it didn't disappear this time. It lingered, just a second longer than before, like the world refused to reject it. Her lips parted again. Another sound tried to form, this one stronger, still fragile, but real. Her chest tightened instantly, fear rising. She looked at Keanu, like she was about to apologize for existing, but he didn't react with alarm, or judgment, or even surprise. He just nodded once, as if to say, it's okay to continue existing like this. Lily's breath shook. Then, for the first time in a long time, she didn't immediately stop herself. The sound stayed, hanging in the air of the abandoned theater. And something, inside her, something she thought had died completely, answered back. The abandoned theater didn't feel abandoned anymore. Not because it had changed, but because Lily had. The air inside seemed different now, less like dust and memory, more like something fragile trying to exist again without permission. Sunlight slipped through broken windows in uneven strips, landing on the worn stage like quiet invitations. Lily Carter stood there longer than she had ever stood in one place without running. Her breathing was still uneven. Her hands still trembled, slightly at her sides. But she didn't leave. Not this time. Across the empty seats, Keanu Reeves remained still on the edge of the stage, watching without pressure, without expectation. He wasn't waiting for performance. He wasn't waiting. for perfection. He was simply there, and that was what made it different. Lily swallowed hard. "I can still hear it," she whispered. Keanu nodded gently. "The sound?" She shook her head. "No, not just the sound." A pause, her voice lowered. "Me." That confession hung in the air like something too honest to take back. She stepped slowly onto the stage, one step, then another. The wood creaked beneath her feet, and instead of flinching, she listened. Really listened. Keanu didn't speak, didn't guide, didn't interrupt. Lily reached the center of the stage and stopped. Her eyes closed. For a moment, nothing happened. Just wind slipping through broken walls. Just dust moving in sunlight. Then, a breath. A single note tried to form. It broke halfway. Her body tensed instantly. But this time, she didn't retreat. She stayed. Another breath followed. Stronger, less afraid, still imperfect, but real. The sound filled the theater in fragments, like something learning how to stand after forgetting it had legs. Lily's hands lifted slightly without her noticing. Her body remembered rhythm before her mind could stop it. And then, something inside her cracked open in a way that didn't feel like breaking anymore. It felt like release. Her voice came through, not fully, not beautifully, but undeniably alive. The melody she had buried for months began to return, in pieces, stitched together by trembling courage and unbearable emotion. Each note carried weight, grief, guilt, memory, but also something new. Choice. Keanu's eyes softened as he listened. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Lily's voice wavered harder as the emotion rose. At one point, she almost stopped. Fear surged through her chest, but she didn't look at the silence behind her anymore. She looked forward and kept going. The song wasn't finished. Not yet. But it existed now. That was enough. When the final note faded into the empty theater, the silence that followed wasn't heavy like before. It was gentle, almost respectful. Lily opened her eyes slowly. Her cheeks were wet. She hadn't even realized she was crying. She turned toward Keanu, her voice barely steady. "I thought I lost it." Keanu shook his head once. "You didn't lose it," he said quietly. "You buried it so it could survive what you were going through." Lily laughed weakly through tears. "It felt like it was killing me." Keanu nodded. "I know." A long pause followed. Then Lily looked down at her hands. "They'll hear me again," she whispered. It wasn't a question anymore. It was fear and hope at the same time. Keanu stood slowly, and for the first time, he smiled. Not big, not performative, just human. "Then let them," he said. Weeks later, the town didn't whisper about the broken girl anymore. They whispered about the voice, about the night she returned to the stage, about the sound that made people cry without understanding why. But on the night of her first public performance after everything, Lily didn't look for the crowd first. She looked for one person, in the back row, near the exit, where he always stood when things mattered most. Keanu was there, just for a moment, smiling, proud, and then, like he had done what he came to do, he turned and walked out before the lights could fully catch him. Lily stood at the microphone, heart steady for the first time in a long time. She took a breath and sang. Not as someone who had been fixed, but as someone who had survived herself, and somewhere deep in the song she sang alone in front of the world was the unfinished melody of everything she thought she had lost.